to Eye on Horror. This is episode 30, otherwise known as season 2, episode 8, depending on how you're keeping track. This is our 30th episode, you guys. How exciting is that?
All right.
I am your host, James J. Edwards, and with me, as always, is your other host, Jacob Davidson. How you doing, Jacob?
Doing fine, just still waking up.
You party hard.
Well, I was at the premiere of Satanic Panic last night.
Oh, yeah, we'll talk about that. I saw it a couple weeks ago. We'll talk about that. But before we start the show without him again, which we do frequently, your other host, John Correa. How you doing, John?
The literal embodiment of Satanic Panic, if anything. Doing well. I have actually been up for a few hours now, so I got you guys beat. Changing time zones.
Are you in Philadelphia or New York?
No, I just left Philadelphia a couple days ago. I am now in Phoenix, Arizona.
Oh my God! Oh, so you're only 1 hour ahead. Okay.
Actually, I think in the part of Arizona we're in, we're on the same. I think we're on the same timeline because we.
All right, look at that.
But yeah, it's been crazy. It's been 2 weeks, like 5 or 6 cities already. So
Cool.
Pumping them out.
Let's jump into what's been going on. Let's talk about Satanic Panic.
Yeah, like I mentioned, I was at the premiere of Chelsea Stardust, Satanic Panic last night at the Egyptian Theater. And I actually know Chelsea, and it's really cool that she's gotten 2 movies out this year. The other one being the Into the Dark movie, All That We Destroy, which came out around Mother's Day. And this was a completely different story, though. Like, it definitely in line with horror comedy, and it was a lot of fun. Like, I had a great time, and yeah, it's basically about this pizza girl who goes to deliver to this, like, affluent, like, rich gated community, and it turns out they're all Satanists, and they need a virgin sacrifice, and they think she's a virgin, so they want to sacrifice her to a demon, and it kind of turns into, like, an after-hours Evil Dead wacky, like, chase with lots of blood and gore and guts, and Jerry O'Connell.
Yeah, I got a link to it a couple weeks ago. I didn't realize that I guess it's been hitting festivals because I think Kelly saw it at TIFF or something.
Yeah.
But, I got a link to it a couple weeks ago. And it's a lot of fun. It's, it's nothing that you haven't really seen before. But, what was really funny with me, when I was watching it is the girl, not the pizza delivery girl, but the girl she meets up with who kind of becomes her B-Fry, her ally. For about half the movie, I was like, I know her. She's freaking from, she's the roommate from Happy Death Day.
Yeah.
I was going, okay, I know that face. It was pretty exciting to see her. I hope that she becomes a scream queen.
Ruby
Modine.
Really,
yes. Yeah, that's her name. I think I was expecting it to be more like summer of '84, I think. And maybe that was all me because, growing up in the quote, Satanic Panic, I think I was expecting it to be more literal of a title, but it was, it's just a girl running from a bunch of Satanists.
Yeah, and at the screening last night, she mentioned Society was a big influence, which I definitely see, because, it's like the secret lives of the 1%, and what a bunch of assholes they are.
Yeah, you can. Speaking of asshole 1%ers, let's move on. Who has seen Ready or Not?
I have.
I did too. Do you see it, Korea? Have you seen anything?
The unfortunate side effects of being on the road. I've seen other stuff I could discuss, but no, I haven't. I'm planning on seeing Ready or Not today. So,
what'd you think of Ready or Not?
I loved it. I thought it was fun. Oddly enough, I thought it was sillier than Satanic Panic. But yeah, Samara Weaving was really good in it. I really like her, and it reminded me a lot of Clue, because there were a lot of funny little recurring bits, and like with all the murders and stuff. So it was a pretty good time.
I consider it a marriage between The Most Dangerous Game and You're Next, and the wedding takes place in the Clue house. That's how I consider it.
There you go.
I think
consider me sold. That was...
I think. Oh, it is a lot of fun. That's the best way to describe it. Is it's fun. I think they're mismarketing it because they're trying to make it out to be this pure horror movie, and for me, it wasn't really that scary. There's some pretty gruesome violence and stuff in it that's going to make you kind of like, cringe and watch through your hands, but it is hysterical. It is.
Yeah.
They should be leaning harder into the comedy aspect of it because it is hysterical.
Yeah, no, I thought it was definitely more on the comedy end of horror and comedy.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, there were a few good tension moments, some good thriller moments, and a few good jump scares. But for the most part, it was kind of a splat. Well, I guess kind of a splatstick comedy, considering the sheer number of maids that get wasted in that movie.
And I loved the cokehead klutz who, she wants to take part in this whole thing, and she's totally incompetent, but she ends up with the highest kill ratio in the movie just because she's such an idiot and, like, accidental. It is hilarious.
Well, to quote the late Rick James, cocaine is a hell of a drug.
That's good times. Another one that I saw that I got a link for is a movie called Haunt, which is it's produced by Eli Roth, and it actually looks like it. It's about a group of kids who go to a Halloween haunt, and it.
Oh yeah, I saw the trailer.
Yeah, and the thing is, this haunt is like, it's basically almost, that's what makes me think of Eli Roth, is it's almost like the haunt is hostile, because it's pretty brutal and it's gross what happens to these kids, and they're just trying to get out.
Right.
But it's a fun. It was. I mean, not. It's fun in a different way than Satanic Panic and Ready or Not. It's fun in one of those. Oh my God, I can't believe that. Just like the Hostel movies.
Right. So
quote,
would you say it's
fun.
Torture porn?
Torture porn light. It's more graphic than your average like slasher movie, but it's not like it's not like Turistas or it's probably not even as bad as like a Saw movie. But it's weird because it's such a simple concept of, okay, let's go to this haunted house that isn't really a fake haunted house, but it's so effective. It's pretty cool.
I finally saw James's big recommendation, Greta, from the other.
Oh my gosh.
From last year or so.
Did you love it or did you love it?
I loved the shit out of it. I mean, we discussed previously A Simple Favor and how deliciously just like out there that movie was on like different levels, and Greta was, I think those two would pair up as a good double feature just because they're like this hyper reality, Greta being the more intense one of the two, but oh man, such great performances all around, and that ending was like really weird and just like it hit hard when I felt like like you're watching the whole movie and you're like, wow, this ending should not be as effective as it is, but it was.
Well, the ending, the reason it feels like that is you see it coming a mile away. You know how Greta's going to end, but it doesn't matter. You're still like, oh my God, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still got to check it out.
Oh,
And
yeah, you absolutely do.
I'm trying to remember the name of the French actress.
Isabelle Huppert.
All right.
Yeah.
Isabelle Huppert, phenomenal. Like, I haven't seen her in a movie since my film school days, so it was great seeing her in something again.
You should see Elle, which was a couple years ago. It's a Paul Verhoeven movie.
Super intense.
The movie as a whole, I wasn't a huge fan of, but Isabelle Huppert is amazing in it. And she was in something the same year, not horror. I think it's called Things to Come. Yeah. She had a great year that year. I remember thinking her biggest competition for the best actress Oscar is herself, but I don't think she won for either.
I just remember her in The Piano Teacher and just being blown away by her performance in that. So
she's probably the best actress that is not a household name yet. She's kind of becoming one, but if you say Isabelle Huppert, it's only real film geeks are like, oh yeah, I love her. Joe Sixpack is going to be like, what? Who?
I don't remember her in Transformers.
Where does she stand on the Glenn Close Meryl Streep scale? She's up there.
She's in a league of her own. Come on.
All right, I got a couple other screenings I want to mention. I was at an anniversary screening of the 1989 slasher comedy Cutting Class last week, and which was Brad Pitt's first movie. and it was hosted by Friday Night Frights at the Los Angeles Dynasty Typewriter Theater. And I watched it for the first time last year when Vinegar Syndrome put out a 4K restoration, and I feel like it's a very underrated horror comedy because it's kind of a proto-Scream in that they don't necessarily lean as hard as Scream did on the slasher tropes, but they do it just enough at that time that it was a bit ahead of its time. And also it's got Jill Sholin and Roddy McDowall as the principal, and funny story too. Like they had the director Rospo Pallenberg and the writer Steve Slavskin there, and they talked about how Roddy McDowall was casted because they wanted Malcolm McDowell, and the producer misheard him. Yeah, I swear to God, that's what they said.
That's the best mistake one can make. Like,
yeah, no, he did steal his scenes.
I honestly can't think of any other situation where you could make a mistake and end up with a better result than accidentally booking Roddy McDowall over Malcolm McDowell. Like, I love Malcolm McDowell, but Roddy McDowell all day.
I wonder how many times Bill Pullman and Bill Paxton got roles because the other meant to be cast.
I mean, that's probably how we got that movie Brain Damage.
Yeah. We accidentally got both Bills, so fuck, let's keep them. Yeah. Everyone talks about the Hollywood Chris's now, but they don't remember that back in the day when it was the Bills. You know?
Yeah, there were many a Bills to be had.
When Bill Paxton passed, I remember saying, I'm the first person who posts a meme saying R.I.P. Bill Paxton with a picture of Pullman, I was going to smash my screen.
Oh God.
Anyway.
Yeah, disrespect. But
what else?
Okay. I saw 47 Meters Down Uncaged.
Oh, okay.
Which I thought was a lot of fun. You know, like I saw the original, and it was pretty good, but I feel like this was a vast improvement. You know, like it was a very interesting concept because the whole thing is instead of them, you know, being in a shark cage, it's like these girls decide to go diving in this sunken Mesoamerican city. And it turns out there are these like cave sharks that have been living in there, and they're like, it's kind of like a Descent type thing where like they're albino, they're blind, and and it also has a lot of slasher elements to it because you know it's like the way the sharks sneak up on them and like the corridors and stuff. Like I actually interviewed Johannes Roberts, the director, and he talked about you know like Strangers Pray at Night was, and you know like John Carpenter and stuff was a bit of an influence.
So. Is it just a coincidence that the sunken city is also 47 meters down, just like the shark's cage was when it...
You know, I think that might have just been kind of a title-only thing, because they never mentioned 47 meters.
There's never one point where they're like, how deep are we? Oh, about 46 meters? Oh, nope, we're at 47 meters now. Dun dun.
Yeah, I admit I think it's more of a label at this point, but no, it had some good scares, and it was surprisingly intense for a PG-13 movie, and the casting was pretty interesting because like one of the leads is Corinne Fox, Jamie Foxx's daughter, in her first role, as well as Sistine Stallone, Sylvester Stallone's daughter, in her first role.
Yeah, it was actually I saw some interviews with those two actresses, and I think it was Jamie Foxx's his daughter was talking about how she was growing up on the red carpets with her father, and now he's on hers, and all he's doing is just being an embarrassing dad, taking selfies and photos and posting constantly. And I just thought that was funny as hell, thinking of like, because I'm picturing, of course, Jamie Foxx in Baby Driver, you know, just acting crazy, taking selfies all over the red carpet for 47 meters down too.
And I think this is a good lead-in for our main topic. I saw Invader Zim Enter the Florpus, which just premiered on Netflix.
Okay. Which
isn't necessarily horror, but it being a Jonan Vasquez cartoon, it's pretty horror adjacent. Because for those of you who remember, Jonan Vasquez is a cartoonist artist who did the independent comic series Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, and for some inexplicable reason, in the early 2000s, made a cartoon on Nickelodeon called Invader Zim, which was only like 3 seasons, but it became a cult phenomenon, especially for horror kids like me. And after all these years, they came back with a Netflix movie that just premiered last week called Invader Zim Enter the Florpus, and it's pretty wild, and it was a lot of fun. Basically, Zim just comes back after all this time, and he's ready to take over the world again, and all kinds of crazy shit happens in the process.
And fans of the show should know, if you haven't seen it yet, which is surprising if you're a fan, nothing's changed. Like, it's like the animation has changed a little bit, but it's almost like they never stopped making the show. Like, it just picked up right where the humor, everything was still on point and brilliant. Just the whole opening bit with Dib in the chair had me on the floor laughing.
He's more chair than man. Yeah, no, like there's just so many weird and quirky bits, and like there's a one-off joke about vampire bees, and and the animation does get pretty whacked out. Like it is pretty crazy. So it is, and I agree with Jonathan. It's like it's a perfect bridgement between the original series and this new movie, and it is so goddamn funny. Like, just there's a lot of weird slapstick and dumb jokes that did have me rolling.
Cool. Well, speaking of our regular topic, there is something that we've all seen that we're going to talk way more in depth about later on, but Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Yes.
Which it's been out for a few weeks, so everyone listening has probably already seen it as well. What'd you guys think of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark?
I loved it. I thought as a movie, I thought it was a solid, kinder trauma, like kid appropriate horror movie. I thought it was solid all overall. There was definitely, I think, more so the fan or the movie itself was more of an homage to the legacy of the books than it was in adapting them, because some of the stories didn't line up, but that's all right because it didn't need to with the story they were telling with this one. But I really enjoyed it as a huge fan growing up on those books. I had a lot of fun with it. Yeah.
See, I'm a little torn on it because I loved the actual stories. I love how they totally stuck to Stephen Gammell's artwork when they brought it to life basically in, the 4 or 5 stories that actually do come to life in the movie. I love those parts. That was like bringing me back. But the wraparound story, the story that kind of brought them back, it was just real formula, like right down to, let's hunt down the old wise person who's done this before and they'll tell us how to defeat it. It's like, it was just real formula, but it was so much fun seeing those creepy drawings come to life. So I did enjoy that a lot. What about you, Jacob? Be the tiebreaker.
Yeah, for the most part, I'd say it's pretty good. And also, kind of going with what Jonathan said, keep in mind that it's kinder trauma, so, it's kind of meant to be aimed toward a slightly younger audience. PG-13 after all. But yeah, no, the wraparound story did drag a little at times, but when the actual scary stories kicked in, like that, those were great. Like,
they were awesome.
One of my favorites when I was, Harold. Yeah, like that one scared me as a child, and it was basically pure nightmare fuel on the screen. So, they knew what they were doing.
We'll talk a lot more about the specific stories when we get into our topic, which we've tipped our hand as to what it is. But I just wanted to get out of the way that, what we thought of the movie while we're talking about stuff we've seen. And now let's move on to our subgenre. So what do you got for us, Jacob?
All right. Well, actually, I kind of forget how we came to this consensus, but it felt like a good thing to do now. So horror musicals.
Come on, Jacob, say it again, but once more with feeling. Oh, I had to make it.
Give us jazz hands.
Give us some jazz. Come on.
And all that jazz.
I think this is just to give Korea another chance to talk about Anna and the Apocalypse.
I was actually gonna not mention that. It is finally gonna get a Blu-ray release in the UK, so that's good. Finally getting a physical media release of it, but
yeah, I still got to see it.
But yeah, we wanted to just discuss horror musical movies. Because if we're gonna talk about stage plays and whatnot, we have to bring Waylon back on because that is Waylon's thing to it.
That's his jam.
I mean, he's the one that introduced me to the brilliance of David Hasselhoff and Jekyll and Hyde musical.
Sebastian Bach did that too, though.
Yeah, he says he did a really good job with that too.
All right, but let's talk about horror musical movies. Did either of you guys see? This is kind of a new one from a few years back. Stage Fright.
I did with Meatloaf.
With Meatloaf, yeah, and Minnie Driver. It's kind of like Anne and the Apocalypse in that it's set in this musical theater camp, and they do bust into song. They're like cruising around, the campground singing and stuff. But the killer, there's this kabuki mask wearing killer who's stalking the kids. And he's like a heavy metal singer. He's like got this merciful fate King Diamond thing whenever he kills. He's, does these, he's doing his, and at the end credits, he's singing his heavy metal song over them, and he's like thanking people for sticking around for all the credits in this song. You have to listen to the lyrics of the closing song. Anyway, Stage Fright this is not the Stage Fright from the one with the owl head guy.
Yeah.
Was that from the 70s, I think?
80s. It was Michael Soavi. He got his start in Demons, and he worked with like Lamberto Bava a lot.
Yeah, it's not that movie. This one is from I want to say 2014, so it's only like
it's only like a few years old.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and mention the greatest horror musical ever made. Sorry, Anna, it's not you. You're close,
Little
but
shop of horrors, little shop. Is that where you're going?
Oh fuck yeah, that's where I was gonna go.
Nice.
Are you kidding me? Little Shop of Horrors is brilliant because if you already know the whole story behind the original Little Shop of Horrors, it's insane to think that someone saw that movie and just went, "What if that was a musical?" And so it started off as like a Broadway, off Broadway. I don't know.
Well, it started off as a Corman movie.
Yeah, in the 50s.
Yeah, it's a Corman movie. It's just a B movie, and someone saw that and said, "You know what would be good in this movie? Songs."
Yeah. and it was brilliant, and the brilliant Frank Oz brought it to life, which makes sense because if you're going to bring to life a giant singing alien plant, you got to bring in one of the master puppeteers to come in and direct it. He's also a brilliant comedy director. So you add that with Rick Moranis and Steve Martin as the dentist, and it is...
Yeah.
Dude, seriously, that Steve Martin dentist song still gets stuck in my head like almost every
You'll
single
be a
day.
dentist.
Little known fact, I actually did the puppetry for the plant in a production of Little Shop of Horrors in college.
Oh, nice.
There are 4 different plants. There's 2 that are hand puppets, and one of them is actually on a jacket that Seymour's carrying around, so that one wasn't me. And then there's one that is a full body, and there's one that is like actually the puppeteer is inside the head of this thing, and that's when it's the hugest. But anyway, yeah, I got to do the puppets for it. I got to live in that damn plant for a summer.
So you got to be Audrey too.
me and the guy who was the voice of it was standing on the balcony with the microphone singing, and so he was like, we had to do a little bit of ventriloquist in the back action going on.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm jealous.
It was fun. It was a good time. I think I lost 15 pounds that summer just because these puppets are made of styrofoam. And they're heavy enough to be a pretty decent workout. I remember walking past a mirror once and I had my shirt off and I looked and I'm like, oh, damn, I'm kind of ripped now. Wait till the show's over and I start eating ding-dongs again, though. I'll lose it.
Speaking of college and musicals, I'd have to say the big one for when I was in college was Repo, the Genetic Opera.
Oh, yeah.
That movie's so hit or miss with me. Like, there's
starring Paris Hilton.
There's so many parts that I loved about it, and then so many parts that I'm like, why do I feel like I am watching like the theatrical version of a Hot Topic store?
Well, I went to a theater school, a partly theater school, so needless to say, it did pretty well with a lot of those kids in that scene. But yeah, no, I think it still holds up fairly well. I mean, it's a pretty dark and intense musical horror opera with like a lot of medical trauma, and again, great casting. Like Bill Moseley's in it, and you got Anthony Stewart Head.
Yeah, and Giles.
Yes. And and the songs are pretty good. Like, I mean, I still got that Zydrate song stuck in my head. It was very catchy. And yeah, so like didn't they do it as like a tour movie, like a tour theaters for a bit, and then they released it in mainstream theaters?
Yeah, I think there was like a roadshow version of it, is how they how they did it originally. Yeah.
Well, that was around the time when like movies like Saw and Paranormal Activity were doing like, you know, you demand it and get it to your screen. Yeah. Like they were doing that fan bringing it out before getting it into like full runs.
If you want to see it, say it.
Yeah, which is a great campaign. I don't think you can do it now with today's digital, but
no.
Well, what about the ultimate? This is where I thought you were going until I realized you were doing Little Shop, the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Oh yes,
which I actually spent most of the '90s in a Rocky Horror shadow. Because I was a theater geek. I was the plant in Little Shop, and I was Rocky Horror. I actually was Rocky Horror.
Oh.
In my shadow cast, I was a sin of the flesh at the New Art. Yeah, I was one of the sins of the flesh.
No way.
Yep. That I was. So the Rocky Horror Picture Show. If people ask me my favorite movie, my head always says Boogie Nights, but my heart always says the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Oh yeah.
And neither is wrong because I love them both. But I mean, you're talking about the songs in Repo the Genetic Opera. For me, nothing could beat the songs in the Rocky Horror Picture Show, except for maybe the songs in Shock Treatment, which is its unofficial sequel.
Not a sequel, it's an equal.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Nice.
It's funny. Shock Treatment's great because some of the characters are the same, but they're played by different actors, and some of the actors are the same, and they play different characters.
Yeah.
I think the only person who plays the same character in both Rocky and Shock Treatment is the guy who plays Ralph Hapshat.
Yeah.
I think everybody else is like different.
Shock Treatment was originally going to be like a straight up sequel where it was going to be like Janet had Frankenfurter's kid and Frankenfurter comes back to claim his kid, but like Tim Curry didn't want to come back, Susan Sarandon, all of them. So they were just like, you know what? Fuck it. We're going to parody. They basically parodied reality TV like 15 years before reality TV was actually a thing.
Yeah, maybe more. I mean, it was Shock Treatment is what, 83, I think?
Yeah. It's insane how ahead of its time it was.
Yeah.
I love Shock Treatment. I know a lot of people hate it, but I think I don't think it's not a better movie than Rocky, but like the soundtrack alone, I like it more.
I think that's the thing. I think maybe it's because I've heard the soundtrack to Rocky so much more, and Shock Treatment's a little fresher. Yeah. But I think I like the songs better in Shock Treatment, and I know the singing is better in Shock Treatment because Jessica Harper plays Janet, and she can sing circles around Susan Sarandon. Yeah. And I think Cliff DeYoung is Brad, who is a better singer than Barry Bostwick. So, and then you've got Richard O'Brien, Little Nell, and Patricia Quinn. So you've got basically the core of the Rocky Horror cast back in different roles.
Only thing you're missing is some Meatloaf.
Yeah, and Tim Curry. There's no Tim Curry in it either.
Yeah.
But it's I love Shock Treatment. I mean, it's questionably horror, but it has the pedigree. But the songs are, I mean, I think I might like the actual songs better than Rocky's. I know that's sacrilege. I don't know anybody who doesn't like Shock Treatment. I only know people who haven't seen it
and immediately dismiss it.
Yeah. Everybody I know who has seen it has liked it. So I don't know. Or we're probably going to get bombarded with people. I hated it. It sucked.
Well, hey, listen. So to the few people that listen to this podcast, if you don't like Shock Treatment, you can keep your opinions to yourselves because we don't care. And in the immortal words of Brad in Shock Treatment, the best thing that you can do is die. God, that's such a great song. Fuck.
Keep it bitching in the kitchen and crying in the bedroom all night. People who haven't seen Shock Treatment are like, what are these guys talking about?
Further proof that you need to see this. Come on. There's an entire song where Brad is singing to kitchen appliances. Come on, people. Watch this movie.
And they rhyme blender with first offender. Come on. It does not get any better than that. Dear toaster, won't you put the burn on me? Come on. This is lyrical gold.
Just that end song where it's like, we're gonna do it anyhow. It's like such an uplifting song, but also like they're saying the most ridiculous stuff. Like, yeah, some people like to do it for the money, some people like to do it on the pavement, some people do it for the payment, but we're gonna do it anyhow. And it's like, is this trying to be uplifting, or I don't know.
Okay, let's move on. Jacob's glassing over because he hasn't seen Shock Treatment. He's not getting any of these insiders.
Jacob, do you need to borrow one of my 4 copies of Shock Treatment?
Well, I mean, I'm sure you could spare one.
I actually have an old DVD because I upgraded to the Arrow Blu-ray, so I have a DVD copy of Shock Treatment for you.
Oh, I have it on. It's one of those movies that even though I own it on Blu-ray, actually I have 2 copies of Shock Treatment on Blu-ray because Arrow put out 2 different versions,
different covers. There was the Cosmo and the Nation covers.
Yep, yeah. I double dipped, and but I still can't get rid of that DVD of it. For some reason, I have to hold on to it, and of course, still have the soundtrack on LP, of course. But yeah, do you guys want to start spit firing a couple more titles? Rapid fire.
Yeah, go.
Yeah, like I got one that I actually just rewatched a couple days ago that I think still counts. The Monster Club. It was made by a bunch of Amicus alums, and I think it's the only kind of horror anthology musical, because it's basically about Vincent Price is a vampire, and he becomes friends with John Carradine, who's a horror writer, and he takes him to the Monster Club. It's like kind of a monster discotheque, and in between the anthology segments they have these musical interludes with like actual like rock and roll bands and stuff, and there's songs like Monsters Rule the World and like a skeleton stripper, so yeah, the music's pretty catchy, and just kind of adds to the charm.
Quick question, Jacob, does the skeleton stripper bear it all?
Yes.
Bear it to the bones?
And yes.
Oh man, the dad
falls
jokes
to pieces.
Today. I'm sorry.
The dad jokes. Do you guys consider Phantom of the Paradise a horror musical? I mean, it's got plenty of music in it, but they don't actually break into song. It's all diegetic.
Yeah,
it's got some of the best music out there. Paul Williams,
absolutely does.
Fucking genius. Like,
that's the hell of
it. Someday, man, come on. Phantom of the Paradise is one of my like you were saying, Rocky Horror is in your heart. Rocky Horror was in my heart until someone went, hey, if you like Rocky Horror, you should check out Phantom. And then that got in a real bad fist fight with Rocky Horror in my heart. And ultimately
well, and Phantom of the Paradise is another Jessica Harper jam, which is...
She's got a beautiful singing voice.
She's an amazing singer.
But she does the most ridiculous dance twice in Phantom of the Paradise. The arm raising, like flapping around. Shout out to my fiance who loves to point that out and tries to replicate it.
I think we need video.
Well, I'll get us video. I got 2 that I definitely want to mention. Cannibal the Musical, which is Matt Stone and Trey Parker's first movie.
That's the South Park guys, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that they went on to make South Park after. That was released by Troma. It is all the seeds of what South Park and Book of Mormon and like everything that they did is in this movie, and it is so over the top and so ridiculous. There's an entire song about being trappers, and killing innocent animals, and how like that makes them feel manly. And it's so low budget and so bad in so many ways, but it's so much fun. And then on the opposite spectrum in almost every way is Takashi Miike's The Happiness of the Katakuris, which is a Japanese horror comedy zombie musical with the most insane claymation I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. Like, my description of any description I can give of that movie does not do it justice on how batshit crazy that movie is. Just seek it out. The Arrow release is beautiful.
And speaking of Troma, that reminds me, they also did another kind of mass hybrid zombie horror comedy musical called Poultrygeist, with chicken zombies and songs
Night
about
of the Chicken Dead.
Yes, and songs about. I'm trying to remember. I think there were songs about love and also songs about why where like big corporate franchises suck, and just all the usual crazy Troma stuff mixed in with lots of blood, gore, and other bodily fluids.
Which also I will put down with Toilet of the Dead as having the greatest Red Band trailer of all time, because for Poultrygeist, the Red Band trailer was nothing but all the goriest shots of the film put to a heavy metal song that's just screaming, "I'm a zombie chicken from Tromaville. All I want to do is kill, 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 kill." And it's like a solid minute of that just going, and then it just ends. It's like, oh, I want to see that.
Good times.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to revisit musicals again when we get Waylon on and we talk about actual musicals, like musical theater stuff. But do you want to move on to our topic?
Yeah, I think we're good.
All right, let's do it. Well, as we already, kind of tipped our hand, we're going to talk about Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Not just the movie, which we've already kind of discussed, but the actual books themselves and the Scary Stories documentary that came out a few years. We're just going to kind of everything Scary Stories. And let's start off, because I'm actually curious myself. What are your favorite stories from the books? I mean, which ones really haunted you as a kid?
I was about to say favorite stories or ones that scared the shit out of me as a kid.
It could be, for me, it's the same. Yeah, but
there's a few that are both, but there's a few that are definitely in two different categories.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of spectrums there. Although I've got one that's both a favorite and also one of my favorite of the scariest, or that I consider the scariest, which was actually in the movie, and I mentioned before, Harold the Scarecrow, which in the movie it's a bit different, but in the book, it was pretty creepy, because in the book, the story is like basically these two farmers make a scarecrow and name it after some dude they don't like, so they just beat the shit out of the scarecrow and make fun of it, and then the Scarecrow Harold starts to come to life, and it also ends in one of the more gruesome notes, because like the scarecrow skins one of the farmers and turns him into a scarecrow.
Yeah, it's one of the really, I read this when I was 8. Are you kidding? I mean, it's
yeah.
No wonder I'm so messed up. The ones that really, a lot of those stories, and they're sourced at the end of each book. They're old, like, campfire stories and urban legends and stuff, and those are the ones that really spoke to me. Like the story of the Hook is in there. The Killer in the Back Seat is in there. The ones that are urban, the ones that you can find in those Jan Harold Brunvand books. The Vanishing Hitchhiker and the Choking Doberman. The kid who gets the Mexican rat as a pet. And they think it's a dog.
Oh, the Big Toe, where someone accidentally eats someone's a part of a dead body.
That's more of a ghost story than an urban legend.
But that was the one that terrified me as a kid. I don't know why, but just accidentally eating a dead body and then like it coming to haunt you.
Did they accidentally, though? Because the kid finds the toe, brings it home, and the mom cooks it. I don't think it's an accident. I think they mean to do it. It's an accident.
In the movie, it's an accident, yeah.
It's an accident that the body comes after him, and it's the whole golden arm thing. It's like, who's got my golden arm? Who's got my big toe?
Right.
It's one of those deals.
But like, I think what terrified me about that story the most was it was a total, like, they did this thing, and now there's consequences to their actions. Like, that's probably like one of the biggest stories of like they did something bad and there's nothing to stop the consequences. And I was a little shit when I was a kid, so that terrified me of just like not being able to like make up for doing something wrong. I think that's what scared me, at least.
Another one I really liked that I think is pretty creepy is the Scary Stories version of the Wendigo. Because it's interesting how it was framed, like, because, like, usually with the Legend of the Wendigo, it's like a cannibal spirit, but in this case, like they say in the story, it drags somebody until it, like, basically grinds them to ashes.
Yeah.
And just the way it's framed is just really creepy, because, like, they find a dude who's a victim of the Wendigo, and, like, they open his coat, and he's just, like, nothing but ashes. And they kind of hinted it in the movie version, because like they briefly go over the pages, like, oh, is Wendigo coming? Not this time, but who knows?
Well, the ones let's talk about the ones that they did in the movie, because the big toe is in there, and it's one of the friends, he's eating a stew and there happens to be a big toe in it, but the ghoul that comes after him for eating the big toe is actually from a different story. The illustration is from one called The Haunt, which is like this thin, gaunt woman with no eyes, which is great because it's a horrifying image, and I guess they just wanted to use the big toe. So hey, let's cross pollinate the what is it, Mighty Doe tie, whatever. That one is
Mighty D Doe tie.
Yeah, that one is in the movie is kind of a hybrid as well of two different stories where they're very similar, but one the Mighty Doe tie, however you say it, just a head comes down the chimney, but the other one, all of the body parts come down the chimney and reassemble. So that one's kind of a hybrid as well, but.
The Jangly Man, I think, was the other one, right?
I don't think it was called the Jangly Man. I almost want to say it was called something simple.
Meatai Doty Walker.
Yeah, that's that one. But the other one that it's a mix of, it might just be called like the head and the chimney, something simple like that. And the dream, this is actually my hands down my favorite scene in the movie. It's the one where in the trailer everything is like red and pink, and there's the fat woman ghoul. That one is completely different. It's just the character that's the same, but it's a really effective scene because everywhere this poor kid looks is this damn creepy character. The red spot, the one with the spiders in the cheek, that's pretty much exactly how it is in the book.
And that was super scary for me when I was watching it, because I was in Philadelphia at the time, and when I saw the movie in theaters, and that story creeped me out as a kid too. Especially since like when I got back into them a second time as a teenager, bad acne and all that. I'm like, oh, I grew up in a log house, so I was used to waking up to random bug bites every now and then. But I got bit by a bug in Hoboken, New Jersey on this trip, and like I have the weirdest red spot, and so every time I go to like look at it, in the back of my head, I'm like, spiders aren't going to come out. No.
Oof.
It's getting itchy right now, actually.
Yikes.
Awesome.
Don't be sleeveless in Hoboken, New Jersey, people.
And I also like how they did in the movie, because it was kind of a slow build-up. Like, it just the whole thing when, like, the one spider leg pokes out. Like, oh, God, that was nasty.
Nope. But that was also one of the most confusing things, because she didn't die from it, but in the movie, the kid goes, I just lost my sister. Because I remember them carting her out, and it's like, oh, she's like one of the few people that didn't die from their thing. And then he's like, my sister's gone. And I'm like, wait, but did she die?
She just went crazy.
Yeah, I can see that.
Well, traumatized.
That was one of the main complaints I had with the movie. I don't think it was because they were holding back because of the PG-13 rating or anything, but there was a few times where I felt like segments kind of stopped early, and then some were drawn out and didn't have a real, like the Jangly Man was terrifying when he first came out. Like I remember my fiance, she complained that the dog didn't respond back, but I was like, well, it makes sense to make it a bit scarier to not have a talking dog in the bit. But like when he first comes out and he's trying to get through like the jail thing and pushing his head through, that was terrifying.
Yeah.
And then he just kept going and didn't really do much, and they just was on the screen too long, and but nothing really happened, and it was just like, ugh. But on the flip side of that, the pale lady with the big smile, I wanted that scene where she finally like embraces him to last a bit longer, just to kind of see, like, because that was so creepy when she holds him and she's smiling and she just starts going, like,
okay. Yeah, also the way that her eyes moved really creeped me out. Like the way she kind of squints while she smiles, which is another thing I want to point out, that the special effects in the movie were outstanding, and
a lot of them are practical too.
Yeah.
They had the big toe woman. That was Javier Botet, that contortionist guy who basically is everything. He was Mama. He's been in. He was the Crooked Man. And I don't know if he played the Jangly Man as well, but it wouldn't surprise me because that is some body twist in there. But yeah, a lot of those effects were not only when they had to be, like when the Jangly Man's putting himself together. Obviously, you got to have some CG there, but a surprising amount of it was practical, more than you would think in a 2019 movie.
And it looked really good. I mean, like when you have that director with Guillermo del Toro, of course the effects are going to be great.
Guillermo del Toro has never been one to. He's always going to choose to put a guy in a suit over, a guy in a motion capture outfit. He's going to want to put a guy in a monster suit, in a rubber suit.
But he's also not afraid to use CGI, and when he does it very smart. Like it's always like subtle. It's always in like proper lighting with it, so that it doesn't look the CGI in his movies tend to age very well, except for that one scene in Blade 2. You know what I'm talking about.
Well, I just reread all 3 of the books last night, just in preparation for this, and it was weird because it only took me a couple hours to read through all 3 of them. They're really short, compact, little bite-sized, books, because they were made for 8-year-olds, I think. That's why the end of Harold is so shocking.
Yeah.
He's drying out this farmer's skin.
Yeah.
If you watch the Scary Stories documentary, and they talk about, they actually talk with a couple teachers whose libraries were trying to get these books banned, and they say to the principals that are banning the books, they're like, have you read these books? The stories, with the exception of the end of Harold, they're not that scary. I don't know why. It must have been the illustrations, and maybe some kids. It was
because they re-released the books without the illustrations, and that's how they kind of got around it for a bit. But those versions
went over like a lead balloon.
We're there for the illustrations mostly. Like, the stories are great, but the illustrations is what sold it. The
stories are just campfire tales that Alvin Schwartz gathered up and put his own spin on. But Gammel's illustrations are what sells the book. And I think they learned that when they tried to release it without them. They ended up having to re-release it with the original illustrations, because that's what haunts people's dreams. And maybe there were some little snowflake kids who were like, Mommy, I can't sleep because of this book. And then the parents were like, get this book out of my library. I don't know. But the stories themselves are not really anything that a kid
wouldn't already tell.
Yeah, exactly. Some of those stories, the one about where they hang the hand from the light string and the girl goes crazy. My 5th grade teacher told us that in class. And then the one about the cursed fraternity, where the 2 pledges disappear and then there's a curse on it. They told that at 6th grade camp. So yeah, these are not stories that kids have not heard already, but Stephen Gammel's illustrations are terrifying. Oh yeah, well, terrifying.
And that's the thing too. I liked the documentary. I thought it went on a little too long. It was one of those documentaries where it was like, all right, it didn't need to be. You could have shaved 20 minutes off and still made the same points.
Except it's only 80 minutes long, so then you have a TV show. But
I don't know what 20 minutes should have been shaved, because I love the input of what everyone was bringing to the table with it. But what I really liked about it was they made the real points like, these stories are really short, and that's really good for kids like me who were ADHD as fuck and could not focus. I got only a few books into Harry Potter, and it was like, this is so much reading. But scary stories, read a 2-page story? Yeah, I could do that. I could knock out that in a few hours.
The longest story in the book, I think, is in the 3rd one, and it is it's a real ghost story about a house that's haunted by a poltergeist. And the paranormal investigators think that it wasn't actually a poltergeist. It was energy from the teenager who lived there that caused things like caps to pop off bottles. And, they thought that it was vibrations from an underground stream, all this stuff. And it's probably 5 pages. And the thing is, because also it's real and they're trying to find the science to it, I can see a lot of kids skipping that one just based on length. And also you get a couple pages into it, you're like, there aren't any ghosts here. So,
yeah. And, well, for one thing, I actually haven't watched the documentary, so I can't really comment in that regard. But I was also going to say that a few of the stories in the various scary stories were actually pretty funny.
Oh, yeah, a lot of them are. And they tell you at the beginning of those chapters, they say, and they're usually at the end. So if you have been getting scared reading up to that point, they say, these are the ones that are going to be, you're going to laugh more than scream. Ha, 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 ha,
Yeah, one of my favorites was the Slithery D. The Slithery D, he came out of the sea. He ate all the others,
what was
but
the
he
one
didn't
where
eat me.
It turns out to be the window cleaner? Window Viper.
I come to wipe the windows. I want to wipe and wash the windows.
There was some comedy to it, and I think that's why I respect the movie. And like I said in the beginning when we first talked about it, is its legacy. I mean, these books, they had scary images, but they were easily digestible for kids, and it got kids interested in reading. I know for me, it's what got me into reading more horror. Like it made me go, oh wow, there's actually books about stuff that I actually want to know about and read. And I think that's the ultimate beauty behind them. Like, they're terrifying. There's awesome illustrations. I'm planning on getting one as a tattoo, and it's going to be the big toe. But I mean, it gets kids reading and it gets them talking. And I think especially preserving campfire stories is important, because for the longest time, that was the only way we told things. Before books, we had campfire stories. Before anything, we had that type. And I was fortunate enough when I was a kid going to camp, we had a professional campfire story teller come in and tell stories to us one time. And I was so enthralled. It was one of the coolest things ever, and I think that it needs to come back. And as much as I did like this movie, I do want to see a straight up adaptation, like anthology movie or series, even if it's just like a few web shorts of these stories getting adapted with that level of like accuracy, with like the adaptation of the drawings. I think that would be really great.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Like, when I was a kid, it was probably one of the first real horror things I read outside of the Goosebumps. And I was a pretty timid kid, but they kept me enthralled, and it was also something me and my classmates bonded over, because we would read the stories like, oh, did you read this one was so scary? Look at this picture, it's so scary. So I feel like it had nothing but a positive effect when I was a kid, like in elementary school, reading these types of books. And I also agree that like campfire stories need to be archived, so it's good that we have books like these to keep them in the public conscience like this.
And it's all folklore, and so now the way that it's passed down is on the internet, and it's getting added to, because if you look at like creepypastas, I mean, how those morph and get repeated, and with each repeating they change a little bit. It's the same thing with these. Like the version of, the killer in the back seat that's in Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark is not the same one that is in the movie Urban Legend, although they're close. And that's what I think that Alvin Schwartz, he even acknowledges in the books, the forwards. He says, back in the day when they didn't have TV, they would gather at someone's house or maybe around a fire, and they would tell these stories. So he even acknowledges, he didn't write any of these. He collected them and he put his own spin on some of them. But, that's why I think Stephen Gammell's contributions to the book are more invaluable, because we saw what happened when they tried to take the illustrations away. It's just...
And not to take away, I mean, those stories are still great on their own, but the illustrations is what takes it to the next level.
They are. The stories are great, but you probably already know them by heart, or, probably a third of them. Who can't tell the story of the hook? But when you see that bloody hook in the book next to it, it has more of an effect on you.
And we will forever be,
especially when you're 8 years old,
haunted by those classic words, me, Ty, Dodie, Walker. I had to say it right at least once. We fucked it up so much during the episode. It had to be said right once. Me, Ty, Dodie,
it's so hard to remember.
It is. Our music is Restless Spirit, and their new album has dropped, and so and there's a version of our theme song on it, so go pick that up. Our artwork is Chris Fisher. Me, James J. Edwards, you can find on Twitter at Cinema Verite. That's like verite, but with fear, so it's Fearite. Where can we find you, Jacob?
You can find me on Twitter at Jacob Davison _. That is at JACOBDAVISON _. And keep an eye out, because I've got more, speaking of horror anthologies, I got more of my stories, Dead Time stories, coming out soon. So keep an eye out for that.
Cool. We talked about that last time. It's the podcast with the purple and the skull Dead Time Stories, because there's like 5 of them. All right, Korea, where can they find you?
I'm Jonathan Korea. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Korean Barbecue. That's CORREIAN BBQ. I mean, we're still on Stardust. I haven't posted in a while, but we're on there. And you can also find me trying to convince or train dogs to repeat back Lynchy Kinchy, Kali Molly, Dingo Dingo, you know. Because that's the other part when the dog talks.
Somebody Googled the story.
What? No, I totally don't have Google up right now.
And you can find all 3 of us at the Eye on Horror Facebook page, at the iHorror Facebook page, or just at iHorror.com. You can find all of our spewings, as well as the spewings of several other talented writers that if you're a steady listener of the show, you are familiar with a few of them because they've been on as guests. So we'll see you in a couple weeks. Hopefully, we'll see when what happens with Korea's travels. But if you're in Phoenix, you might be close to home. Or are you heading the other direction?
Yeah, we're heading back to the East Coast. Next stop is
Who
Kansas.
books this thing?
The next stop is Kansas, and then Rhode Island, and then Massachusetts. So,
but wait, you were just in New York and Philadelphia.
No. At
Dude,
least
fire your tour manager.
At least I'm not driving this time. We're flying.
This is true. This is true.
Well, that's good.
Which is somehow more stressful than driving. But yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see you in a couple weeks. So for me, James J. Edwards.
I'm Jacob Davison.
And I'm Jonathan Korea.
Keep your eye on horror.